to order.
Janet, let's just make sure. Harry, can you hear the room? Can you hear the dais?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, thank you.
Would you do a roll call, Harrison?
Sure. Okay. Director Adcock? Is Director Adcock there?
Not, we have actually Director Corneo.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Oh, next month.
Yeah.
So we have Brenda Corneo here.
Got it. Thank you. Okay. Director Barajas?
Not here.
Framers?
Here.
Carrillo?
Oh, here.
Thank you. Church? Here. Sorry, assuming that was a here. Director Church?
I thought you
Sorry, it's
already
very
called for me.
soft online.
What? I'm here anyway, but
Yes.
Thank
I
you.
already said I answered, so I hope I didn't answer for somebody else.
No, thank you. I just couldn't hear you the first time. Okay, Director McIntyre? Here. Rice? Here. Rochichi?
Not here.
Stefani?
Here.
Velasquez?
Here.
And Chair Brennan?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Harry, and we do have Director Barajas now.
Okay, thank you.
Will you join me in Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Staff, do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda?
There is none.
Now is the time for comments from the public. Comments will be limited to 2 minutes. So are there any general comments? Mr. Light.
Thank you, Chair Brennan. My name is Bill Lipe. I live in Monterey County. My family, like many across this region, relies directly on the 18400 aquifer for our drinking water. I'm here today out of deep concern, not just as a resident, but as a stakeholder in the long-term sustainability of the basin. In the 2024 election, Council Member and Director Luis Baraja was elected to the Salinas City Council and now sits on this board representing the city. He was joined in that election by 3 additional council members and the mayor, new electors, all of whom were supported by many of the same powerful contributors, primarily large agricultural and real estate interests. According to public filings, over 85% of Mr. Barajas's campaign funding came from special interests, including more than $91,000 from large ag operators that draw heavily from the critically overdrafted aquifer. This board is responsible for which this board is responsible for regulating. That concentration of funding is not subtle and it's not isolated. It represents a systemic pattern of influence that deeply worries residents like me and stakeholders throughout the Salinas Valley that aren't in critically overdrafted areas. This isn't about questioning motives, it's about public perception. The 18400 is critically overdrafted. We face difficult decisions ahead, decisions that must be guided by science, equity, and the long-term public interest, not political debts or favors. Councilmember Barajas has a responsibility to recognize his campaign backing how it appears to the public. Whether or not influence exists, the appearance of influence erodes trust in this board and in the sustainability that it's meant to enforce. The water beneath our feet doesn't belong to donor class. It belongs to all of us, including the people in your district. Please govern like that truth matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other public comments? Comments online? If not, we will.
Yes, there
close.
is one online.
Yeah, we do have hands raised online. John Farrow has his hand raised.
Mr. Farrell?
Sent a letter on October 20th about the Castroville and East Side Canals and alternative study. I had anticipated that that study would be presented to the board, and I gather it may not be, at least at this stage. So I just wanted to encourage the board, to encourage staff to address the concerns we raised in our letter, which is primarily that these studies, which were supposed to be the response to a demand that the GSA take a look at moving water north, seem to have been limited to the use of the 11043 water right, which is an irregular and problematic water right. There needs to be consideration of moving water north from other water rights, including the stored reservoir water, for example, the water right that was used to provide SRDF flows, or possibly a pumped well field, and they've been omitted from the Castroville and East Side canals and alternative study, which is a mouthful. But anyway, that's supposed to be the venue in which staff are taking a look at moving water north, and as it's currently set up, they're only going to look at the 11043 water right, which is probably not going to be sufficient water to make a difference. And there doesn't appear to be any good reason to exclude using stored water or using a well field. If those projects are not feasible, they should at least evaluate them and explain why they're not feasible. If they are feasible, I think they probably represent a better alternative. Thanks. Again, I think the board needs to follow this up, so there should be some kind of presentation to the board on this, so there's an opportunity for the board to direct staff to expand the scope of this study. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other comments?
No other raised hands online, Chair.
Thank you. We'll go on to the presentation. 2.1 is understanding seawater intrusion management options and challenges. Mr. Williams will provide a oral report.
And just to remind everyone, that the board and the public, that this is a repeat of the presentation that Mr. Williams did at the October meeting. The reason we're doing it again is we had audio difficulties and we were not able to record it, nor was the public able to hear the beginning part of it. So it's Derek is back.
All right. Well, I'll give the same talk generally, and thank you again for asking me back, Chair Brennan, members of the board. I am going to talk quickly about seawater intrusion and what it takes to solve the seawater intrusion. As you know, your staff members, along with Montgomery and Associates, have been working to develop plans, management actions that will address the seawater intrusion concerns here in the north part of the valley. And next year, you're going to be asked to approve or actually select a preferred set of projects and alternatives to address this seawater intrusion. So in preparation for that, we want to make sure everybody is comfortable with some of the basic ideas and some of the problems with addressing seawater intrusion. Your staff has reviewed a lot of data and has gone through a lot of information and analysis on seawater intrusion, and they've developed a pretty good understanding of what it takes to solve seawater intrusion. It's the type of understanding that is not written in all of our reports. It's the type of understanding you get just from working with it a lot. And that's what I'm trying to express to you today. I want to make sure that you have an understanding of some of the basic problems with seawater intrusion, so when staff comes to you next year and asks for you to select a preferred option, you will have confidence in their recommendations, you'll have confidence in their analysis, and you'll know why they got to the place they did. So there's really three parts of seawater intrusion that I want to talk to you about. Three things that drive your staff's analysis and decisions. One of them, I just say seawater intrusion is challenging, and that's not a very interesting statement. But what I mean by that is, in most groundwater basins in California, when we want to get to sustainability, what we're trying to do is prevent groundwater levels from continuing to drop. We want to stabilize groundwater levels. And you get most of the way there simply by balancing your water budget. If you have the same amount of water coming into your basin as is leaving, your groundwater levels will pretty much stabilize in general. That's not nearly good enough for seawater intrusion. We have to do much, much more than that when we have seawater intrusion. And the reason is because if the ocean is at a certain level, a certain elevation, and your groundwater levels are lower, that's what's driving the seawater into your groundwater here. If you just stabilize water levels and prevent them from going any lower, you still have seawater intrusion coming in. And it's still trying to find the lowest point and keeps going down till it finds the lowest point. So simply stabilizing your groundwater levels isn't enough. You've got to do much more than that. And there's really only two general options that you have. One of them is inland. You can raise groundwater levels very high and push the existing seawater intrusion back out towards the ocean. And this is very successful. It's done in a number of places here in California. The only downside of it is you need a reliable and consistent source of water to keep those groundwater levels high inland. You need to keep that high groundwater level mound there all the time. So you need to be constantly injecting water and constantly pushing the water back, pushing the seawater intrusion back towards the ocean. We've looked at whether we can find enough water here to keep those groundwater levels high enough. In the ASR feasibility study, which you received some time ago, we were looking at it. We could not find enough water in order to keep those water levels up there to have this mound that pushes seawater intrusion back. We're continuing to look at it. We are looking at the Water Resource Agency's 11043 permit. That's a permit, as many of you are aware, on the Salinas River that's held by the Water Resource Agency, looking at whether that provides enough water. I still think it'll be difficult with that permit, partially because there's probably still not enough water, but also that water only appears in wet years during the winter. And you need to keep that mound high in the groundwater all year long. So that's going to be problematic. The other option is to simply capture the seawater intrusion before it comes on shore or as it's coming on shore. And this is what's done in most hazardous waste projects. When we're cleaning up hazardous waste, if there's a plume of a waste, we put wells around it and we just capture that hazardous waste before it goes anywhere. And the capturing seawater intrusion is the same idea. Seawater is not a hazardous waste, but it's still an idea that you would have a line of wells, and before the seawater can actually get on land very far, you would just capture it with these wells there. So it's the same sort of concept there. This extraction barrier is one aspect of the brackish groundwater restoration project, which you've heard about. It's not the only aspect, but it is one aspect of it. The second issue, besides the fact that it's difficult, is the time is very tight right now. Under Sigma, we have to have stopped and turned around seawater intrusion by 2040. That means we have to have selected our projects. We have to go through CEQA CEQA analysis. We have to get all the permits. We have to design the project, build it, and have it operating for a number of years before 2040 comes around. And so because of that, the timing gives us a few problems on what we can actually employ as a project or management action. One thing that we would like to do that is probably not viable is simply to cut back on the pumping or turn off pumping. The idea being if we turn off pumping, groundwater levels will rise and we'll get that mound that I was talking about. The problem with that is when you turn off pumping, what you're relying on is natural recharge. You're saying we're waiting for the natural recharge to start building up that mound. And when you're talking about the 400-foot aquifer or deeper aquifers, recharge gets there very slowly. And so we don't have the time to wait for natural recharge to turn around our seawater intrusion. We have to do something more active than that. The other constraint that the timing puts on us is we don't have the time to say, let's try something small, and if it doesn't work, let's add another small project, and if that doesn't work, let's add another small project. We have to go into this program fairly confident that we have a project that will work. We don't have the time to stitch things together. The third aspect that your staff knows about, that they're thinking about, is that the scale of this problem is significant. People often point to Orange County Water District as a success story managing seawater intrusion. They have an injection barrier, a place called the Talbert Gap. That injection barrier is 3 miles long. They have a string of injection wells 3 miles long. Our seawater intrusion front is 11 miles long. It's much, much larger there. So we have a very large issue that we need to be dealing with. So those three things, the fact that balancing the water budget's not good enough, we have to do much better than that. We have a short time frame and a very large scale of a problem, are the three things that kind of are driving our ideas what would be a successful suite of projects and management actions that could address seawater intrusion. And I'm hoping that you all can keep those three concepts in your mind, because when your staff comes to you and says, this is the suite that we're proposing, you want to be thinking, yes, this is the suite that has to happen or should happen because it addresses all three of these constraints we have: the difficulty, the timing, and the size of the problem. And with that, I would be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. We asked you to do the presentation again because it's so clear. So questions from board members? If seeing none, let's go. Oh, Ellen.
Thank you. So I just have a question. Given the information that you provided and given the success story in Orange County and what they were able to do, and given the timeline.
I'm having trouble hearing you online. Could you turn your microphone on?
Thanks, Harry.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I apologize for that. So given the three different options, obviously the difficulty, the timing, and the extent of the problem, and given that there is a success story in Orange County that is, maybe similar. Obviously, there's some differences. Is there a possibility to be able to look at that, to replicate something similar, to be able to have a viable project in Monterey County?
The question is, could we simulate something that's being done in Orange County? I would say the Orange County experience gives us confidence that seawater intrusion can be controlled. We cannot do it in the exact same way they did. They have a large amount of wastewater that they treat and inject, and we just don't have that much water. And much of the wastewater we do have that we're treating is being asked for by others already right now. So we can't use the same technology they do, but the general concepts of being able to set up a set of wells and be able to control seawater intrusion, we're going down a somewhat similar path that way.
Other questions? Comments from the public? Mr. Christopher.
Thank you. Chris Bond with the Salinas Basin Water Alliance. This gets back to Mr. Farrow's comment during the general public comment, and that is the options that are being looked at other than the extraction barrier and 11043. And I agree with his perspective that we should be looking at a potential well field in the south and moving water to the north in order to see if that is a viable option, alternative to the seawater barrier. And, it very well might not be an option, either physically or financially, but I think for sake of conversation in the community, we brought this up before, we need to have that option properly analyzed so it can put to rest our concern up in the north. Because otherwise, we're being shepherded towards a choice of one, a menu of one choice, which is the extraction barrier. And that's something we've brought up before as unacceptable. And the other point I'd like to raise that is not really being examined either, even though you're partially looking at it with 11043, is the river itself. And I've brought this up time and time again, and I know it's a difficult nut to crack, and Ara sitting here, and Shauna, and we've talked about this a lot, but, you know, have we properly studied the river? And not just the reservoir release water, but all the different kinds of water that exist in the river, the runoff, the rain, whatever. Has that been properly and exhaustively examined? So that option can be put to rest too. And until it, if it is not examined properly, that question is always going to be existing out there in the mind, particularly of the north. Like, why wasn't that studied properly? Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments from the audience? Mr. Light?
Bill Light, Monterey County resident. I am not with the Salinas Basin Water Alliance. Derek, you did an excellent job. That was a super concise and accurate, I believe. It would be nice to sit around and study things more. The 11043 permit's been around, I think, almost 60 years, and that's no disrespect to the staff that's currently here. You inherited that thing. But, you know, the agency sat on that for a long, long time and didn't do anything with it. In fact, it almost got taken away by the state because there was such a lack of activity with it. And I think Derek summed it up very well. There's a small window of opportunity to get water, and really only in high flow events, and that doesn't happen every year. In fact, it probably only happens 2 or 3 times every 10 years. The project to do is the brackish water barrier. Putting wells down there and bringing water north is, as Derek just said in his presentation, is not going to fix the problem. It's not going to satisfy the state's requirement and Sigma's requirements. You need to, Derek said it also, I'll just reiterate what he said. You got to, it's going to be a big project. I think everybody knows that. But your timelines are all messed up. You can't afford to sit on your hands any longer or do some exhaustive study on something that we already know is probably not going to work. And really, with the ruling that happened last week or the week before last, the good actor ruling over in the Central Valley, this GSA is perfectly capable of carving out the good actors in the valley that are not critically overdrafted, are not causing problems, are not impacting half of the county's residents' drinking water. And I know it's an expensive project. I get that. But this industry has been making billions and billions of dollars for 100 years overdrafting. That city of Salinas has too. So the brackish water restoration project is the way to go, and you ought to just bite the bullet and go with it. Thank you.
Other comments from the audience? Mr. Farrow?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I just want to briefly reiterate what I said before, which is that, as Mr. Bunn said, you need to look at a pump well field, but you also need to look at rediversion of stored water from the reservoirs. There's no particular reason why that water should simply be used the way it's currently used, which primarily benefits the south. It's possible to do this. It has been done with the SRDF, and that should be included as a potential source of moving water north. So you've got the well field and the stored reservoir water, and not just the admittedly deficient 11043 right. So I urge again that that be considered as part of the study.
Thank you. Are there other comments online?
Thomas Versick, and then Nancy Isaacson.
Mr. Rusick?
Thank you, Chair Brennan. Tom Versick speaking, and I agree with Mr. Light. That was a great presentation. Very clear, very concise. And I'm going to re-up a question that came up in the 180-400 committee. I probably won't quite do it full justice, but there was someone, one of the local farmers, being generic here, who asked whether demand management has any utility in an approach to seawater intrusion, and Derek had a pretty comprehensive answer. And I'm going to, hopefully he remembers the question, but what role does it have? And I'm going to ask sort of a follow-up question to the same thing, is how much does the timing matter to that? Because whatever the project happens to be, whether it's taking helicopters full of water from the reservoir, or the brackish water project, or whale fields, or putting a bunch of pipes in the river, whatever it happens to be, all those things will probably take 5 to 10 years or more to figure out and to put into place. And so would demand management have a role for the critically overdrafted 18400 until you get the rest, whatever the rest happens to be, until you get the rest in place? Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Isaacson?
Yes, thank you, Nancy Isaacson for Salinas Valley Water Coalition. There are so many things I'd like to say, but I guess primary thing is that for so many years, we, the valley, the community, people, have been pointing fingers at each other as to, oh, it's not my fault, it's your fault. It's not my fault, I didn't do that, you did it. You're taking all the water, we don't get any. You're getting all the benefits, we're not getting any. And, we really just need to stop and take a look at things. The 180-400 is the only designated critically overdrafted subbasin in Monterey County. And that needs to be addressed. They have a problem. They have been overpumping for over 100 years. We've had seawater intrusion, and they have continued to exacerbate it from the pumping. And we as a community need to work together. And I will tell you, the coalition has tried. But to continue to say that South County is getting all of the benefits or most of the benefit, that is just not true. Before the Salinas Valley Water Project, it was shown through studies with that the agency, Water Resource Agency did, seawater intrusion would have been 67,000 acre feet greater than it is today than it was then. That's in 1998. And today it's even less. It would be more without the implementation of the rubber dam and the diversion at the rubber dam from releases from the reservoirs. We just really can't keep kicking the can down the road, and we need to we, the community, need to make the tough decision and do something and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments from the public?
No other raised hands online, Chair.
We have someone in the audience.
Yeah, Roger Matoso, Roseco Vineyards. Been at this a while. One of the things that I think you as a board really need to get your heads around. There were studies done back in 46 and 56, i.e. before the reservoirs, which put this basin in its native natural state, which is what Sigma is all about, okay? Enhancement water falls under someone else's privy. And it spelled out where that water was sustainable and where it wasn't. And where it wasn't was north of Gonzales. And not all north of Gonzales, really between 68 and the ocean. So to continue to pretend it is the reservoirs that make South County sustainable won't hold up at all. There are pre-studies that are from the State Water Board that spell it out. They also spell out that well fields and moving water also don't work, because what creates the pressure, that creates what we used to call the pressure area, which is now the 180-400, is that water stacked up. They researched it back then and pointed out why it won't work. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comments, we will come back to the board. Any more comments from the board? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 2.2, MCWRA activities, Sigma R1 grant. Sarah will introduce our speaker.
Yes, I'm just going to do a brief introduction and share my screen with Shauna's slides here. So good afternoon, directors. Sarah Hardgrave, Deputy General Manager. I'm really pleased to introduce Shauna Murray, Deputy Director, General Manager at the Monterey County Water Resources Agency. We've been working together really closely and through our round one grant for the 180-400 foot aquifer subbasin on our existing facilities to address seawater intrusion. And through the grant funds, we've been able to make some good progress with improvements to those existing facilities and other collaborations. So with that, I just wanted to say thank you to Shauna. We're wrapping up the round 1 grant by the end of the year, and we've been able to expend most of the funds, and so it's pretty exciting to share the work that's been completed.
Good afternoon, Chair Brennan and members of the board. Thank you for having me today. Shauna Murray with the Water Resource Agency. So I did want to kind of go over round 1 grant, the sub-grant agreement we've had, and share kind of those successes with you. It's been a good collaboration with the Groundwater Sustainability Agency, having an opportunity to get funding, state funding for some of these studies. Many of the projects in the GSPs involve the Water Resource Agency, so it seemed like a very natural collaboration to work together. And so we've been, collaborating and participating in many of the studies. So this also aligns with the agency's strategic plan. So this was adopted in 2020. And we were looking forward as far as expanding existing projects, looking at new projects, trying to reach sustainability, collaborating with the GSA, and looking for outside funding. So again, this aligns well with some of our goals of the agency. So there are we've been looking at like 3 different types of activities. The presentation will be focused on existing systems, our Castroville Seawater Intrusion Project distribution system. But I did want to highlight, we've looked at a lot of these feasibility studies and collaborated. Some are still ongoing, some have been completed, as well as our data collection, analysis, and monitoring of the basin. So there has been funding efforts towards those, but really looking at how existing facilities and operations can be optimized to reduce groundwater pumping is the focus of the current study that just wrapped up. So there was 3 kind of main areas of deliverables that came with the Castroville Seawater Intrusion Project and the distribution system optimization. So that was part of component 3. You can see by the dates here that this hydraulic modeling and analysis report, that is what took a few years to develop, a very robust model. That final report was published in July. And then we were able to springboard into developing, design work as far as, building off of that hydraulic model. So those reports just came in late September. And also looking at water scheduling protocols and how we can look at using water a little bit, reducing peak demands and trying to reduce some of those hydraulic issues without physical improvements. So I'll first talk about the hydraulic modeling and analysis report. So really the first step was to develop a robust model that could mimic the existing system. And so this took a lot of effort as far as calibration and making sure it's ground truth, as far as is it actually working in the model, how we see it in the field. So we needed to show peak demand periods and really push the system, which typically is, in the summer months, looking at those high demand systems when we start seeing hydraulic deficiencies. Because when we start seeing those types of deficiencies is when the system operators start using groundwater to reduce that. So typically it would be recycled water is the primary use. The river water, when available, is the secondary use, or third use is the well water. So we look at that, and we wanted to see the system really pushed, because that's how we can see that the model is emulating the real world. So this model report looked at where those deficiencies were and where they're starting to see system, issues throughout the system. And looking at different configurations, there's booster pumps, there's groundwater wells, and there's a lot of turnouts, almost 100 turnouts of where the demand is coming from. So we needed to look at a range of that and find out, where is the system kind of hydraulically having issues where we have low pressure. Once that was completed, there was some development of capital improvement projects that could address those. So these 3 CIP were developed as far as like the leading ones that could address the issues. The first was out in the Rogers Loop area, and adding a check valve and a pressure relief valve really optimized the use of the existing booster pump station so that it could do its job and water wasn't just recirculating through. The next project was having a second outlet pipe out of the storage pond. So there's a storage pond up on the hill at the Monterey One Water Treatment Plant. That's a gravity pond that all of the water goes out into the system, all the recycled water, all the river water. Having a second pipe would increase the capacity of water being able to come out through the system, as well as offer some redundancy so that we wouldn't have a single point of failure in the system. Thirdly, in-stream storage and booster pump station was really looking at the diurnal peaks of the demands as well as seasonal peaks, and considering if the water was being recycled 24/7, you could put it into storage tanks at times where irrigation's not happening. When river water is bypassing the SRDF and going downstream, you could be taking that water, putting into storage and reducing groundwater. So that was the final CIP that was developed, and they estimated about 10 to 12 million gallons would be needed. And that was really looking at a peak demand of a week as far as looking at those uses of water. So moving forward, the engineering team then developed a basis of design report that analyzed all three of those projects, came up with construction cost estimates. So these are engineering estimates. You can see CIP1 is the least expensive at about $650,000. The second storage pipe, the CIP2, second storage pipeline, pond storage is 26 million. And finally, the tank storage was the highest number of just over $33 million. And again, these are engineering estimates at this conceptual level. We proceeded with moving into 60% design on CIP1. That seemed like a feasible project that the agency can implement in the near future. So we wanted to get that one moving forward. So the specifications were developed as well as 60% design plans, which you can see a snapshot here, so that these could move forward with available funding to construction. Finally, on water scheduling, we did work with Monterey One Water, who is the operator of the system, on looking at their SCADA reporting as well as adding turnout meters out in the system so that the SCADA can compare both people's water orders as well as the actual usage. So this has been developed over the last year. The hydraulic modeling will help inform kind of limits as far as where we would want to start declining water orders. At this point, we're trying to get the system, the goal has been to get it working as far as what's actually being happened versus scheduling. So you can see a snapshot here of where irrigators log into the system, put their water orders in, can watch those water orders, and then the output is on the right-hand side showing orders versus actual use. So that concludes my overview of those deliverables. Again, appreciate the collaboration on this and happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions from board members?
I got a question. Brian Rice here. As far as you were mentioning scheduling and stuff is, and I don't know this, but is the CSIP utilized 24/7?
Sorry to interrupt. Would you mind turning your microphone on, whoever's speaking?
Is CSIP, when they have available water, is it utilized 24/7?
It can be. So
It can be?
Yes.
Meaning it's
It's
weekends,
available.
at night?
Correct.
And so when you're doing your scheduling, so irrigators put in there, if they want to run at night, they can run at night, correct?
Yeah, and some irrigators choose to do that, fill up storage ponds. But really, we're looking at total volumes of water that's produced. And so since we're using mostly recycled water, it has a daily peak as well that happens to kind of mimic the irrigation peaks. There's not a lot of wastewater coming into the plant at night. The river water is a little more steady. So there's a lot of factors as far as why water's used when it is, and production times and storage capacity.
Other questions from board members? Seeing none, comments from the public? Mr. Bond?
Chris Bond with the Alliance. Thank you for the presentation. I very much appreciate the collaboration between the GSA and Water Resource Agency with the various CSIP projects that have gone on that have been paid for by GSA Sigma money, and the acknowledgement that CSIP has a role in the health of groundwater in the 180-400 that CSIP operations has a role in the health of groundwater in the 18400. But what I find curious is that even though CSIP is a surface water project, we have another surface water project in the valley, the reservoirs, that you would think we would all acknowledge has a big role in the health of groundwater, and yet the GSA is not really involved with that or taking that into account in terms of how does reservoir water and the operation of the reservoirs affect groundwater. We are taking into account that CSIP operation affects groundwater, but we're ignoring the reservoirs, but that needs to be part of the equation, because I would argue that the reservoirs are very much involved in the health of groundwater in this basin, particularly in the south. And we saw that back during the drought period of 2014-15, that time period. And as far as, back to CSIP, so SRDF, which is the rubber dam, we typically get about 5,500 acre feet from that a year that's diverted from the rubber dam. But to get that amount of water, so last year in 2024, we had to release 137,000 acre feet from the reservoirs to get that 5,500 acre feet down to the rubber dam. So the majority of that water that was released was enjoyed by the southern portion of the valley, most of it. It stayed in the south, and we only got a little bit. So
Thank you.
that's part of the equation here.
Mr. Light?
Bill Light, Monterey County. The equation being talked about is wrong. The water levels south of Gonzales rarely change very much at all. It's really just a timing issue. I thought Mr. Matoso did a very nice discourse on Bulletin 52, which clearly spells out what native natural flow was. And 80 years ago, seawater intrusion was happening because it was being overpumped. So nothing's really changed. It's just a matter of timing. The water gets released later. And probably 80 to 85% of the water that gets released would have gone into the ground in south of Gonzales anyway. There has been some enhancement. There has been some banked water near Chular, but not a whole lot. So I guess some people just want to keep doubling down on lies, and they are lies. That what was just said is not true. Look into it for yourself. It's all right there. As far as CSIP, and I just want to clear up the record, the staff at the agency is really stellar. Era, I don't know where he went. Shauna's still here. I was going to say Shauna deserves a raise. And I really, I think the presentation was good. And I'm just going to say it. I think you should do all three of those SIPs should be done. Obviously, you're going to start with the easiest one. But all of them make sense, because what happens is despite the water being available all the time, it's not being taken all the time. So there's, at some point, they have to dump water that they've treated and it's available, and they have to dump it over the outfall into the ocean, and it goes nowhere. And it's not a surface water thing necessarily, it's recycled water, the SRDF surface water. But you should really do all three of those SIPs should be done. The cost, unfortunately, is going to be borne by those who benefit from it, and it's going to be the folks west of Highway 68. But it should be done. It should have been done decades ago. Kudos to the folks doing it now, and we should support that. Thank you.
Are there other comments either from the audience or online?
No raised hands online, Chair.
Back to the board, any additional questions?
Yeah, just a comment in terms of the funding for the others. So I know obviously there was the funding for the CIP for the CIP 1, but for the other CIP 2 and 3, obviously it's a lot more in terms of the funding costs for those. The funding availability, do we have funding, like the funding, would that come from the state? Where would the funding come from? And obviously the timeline for any available funds for those other projects.
Yeah, thank you. So CSIP is, pretty much self-funded through assessments that are somewhat valley-wide, as well as water delivery fees. And so It's kind of a complex funding system that the agency currently holds, but it is all local. We are looking at more of a comprehensive list of needs. So this is optimization needs, but there are other maintenance needs and other improvement needs that are also going to be looked at, and then coming up with a funding strategy. So at this point, we don't have that longer term funding strategy, nor do we have the funding to build a $35 million project at this time, but we hope to kind of make sure the best project gets to the surface, and we kind of look through the strategy to fund some improvements.
Mr. McIntyre?
Thank you, Chair. Shauna, thank you for excellent report. I'm curious, both you and Sarah, have you looked at the possibility of sunsetting CSIP if we build an extraction barrier, or what happens to CSIP in that case?
I don't have an answer to that. I don't know if Sarah wants to try.
So the scenario that this board selected to move forward of the injection-only scenario of the brackish groundwater restoration project does not have any direct delivery of water. There were scenarios that we included that would provide supplemental water supply to replace groundwater pumping within the CSIP system. I think there's still additional analysis that will be needed to answer your question about the long term with the injection of water into of treated water to have that effect that Derek was talking about of raising the groundwater levels and pushing seawater intrusion back. Right now, the CSIP system is critical in the fight against seawater intrusion. It's delivering recycled water to 12,000 acres. We're doing that instead of what Orange County has done with their recycled water. So I don't have an answer for that question. I think it's going to take some very careful thought and deliberation between both agencies and all of you and both boards to compare the costs of those projects that Shauna has identified and the bigger recycled water master plan that the agency's working on with other options, other projects, how effective they are. And we really just need to have that menu and cost comparison to get to a decision-making point. And we're still working on a lot of those questions.
That makes sense. I just wanted to see if we were thinking about it, because it's worth doing so. I had a second question with regards to the statement that Mr. Bunn made. If we're on average collecting 5,500 acre feet at the rubber dam, and there's 150,000 acre feet coming out of the reservoirs to collect that, do we have any idea what percentage of that water, how many acre feet actually goes to the ocean?
That's a good question. There are a lot of complexities to where the water goes between the dam and the ocean. We don't have the water metered, but we have some estimation based on the Spreckles gauge, knowing what flows there and what's diverted. So it is something that can be calculated, but it's not something typical in our operations because we are required to let water to the ocean. And so what we're looking at is compliance to make sure that have that minimum flow. That's how it's stated. So we're always just above it for compliance. And that's a big portion of what goes to the ocean.
Okay. Thank you, Shauna.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from the board? If not, we will.
Janet, we have.
Oh.
Yeah, just one quick question. So I think under both presentations, this one and the one from the previous gentleman, we're kind of assuming that Salinas's industrial wastewater is going to continue going out to M1W, but we're on a 6-month contract with M1W while the city of Salinas figures it out. As part of the workflows, are you guys considering what that scenario would look like? Should the city of Salinas pursue its own treatment plant, and could that water then be used as new source waters, either for CSIP and or to push back seawater intrusion?
So currently, the industrial wastewater is not being utilized by CSIP. It has through over the last 10 years through different pilot programs, but not consistently. So when we looked at the hydraulic modeling, it wasn't a consideration as far as a source supply because it's not a consistent one that's being utilized. We looked at just recycled water without industrial wastewater, as well as the Salinas River Diversion Facility and the other water. If the industrial wastewater was taken out, that's being looked at some of the other feasibility studies as far as an expanded CSIP, the new seawater intrusion project area as a consideration, but it hasn't been considered in this use. And looking at the scale, we estimate that to be under 3,000 acre feet in total. And we're delivering about 20,000, 21,000 acre feet a year. So it's within that, 12% plus or minus. It would be a bonus if it was there, but it wasn't considered in this study.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Other questions? If not, we will go to the next agenda item, 3.1, appointment of a member to the advisory committee. Harrison, do you have a report?
Just a brief verbal report. Good afternoon, Chair and Board of Directors. We're bringing you today our final advisory committee application for the Upper Valley seat. They weren't able to meet for the October board agenda went out, but they've met since then and had nominated Roger Matoso to take the Upper Valley seat. I think he is here today to speak to his application, and I can answer any questions you have as well.
Thank you. Are there questions from board members? If not, now's the time for the applicant to make any comments. No comments. Comments from the public?
Norm Groot, speaking as president of Salinas Basin Agricultural Water Association. It is my understanding that as Mr. Matoso is the alternate for the Forebay at this point, that he would need to resign that position from the board in order to take this advisory position. I'm just wondering whether or not that resignation has been submitted, and if so, SPAWA also needs a copy of that resignation so that we can hold an election to replace and find a suitable candidate for that position. So I see nods that the resignation has been received.
Harry, could you confirm that we received a request from Mr. Moitoso to, if this was to happen, that would activate his request, if you will?
Yeah, no, we've received an email from him, and then assuming he is appointed today, I'll be sending him a leaving office statement, so he'll be leaving our board tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Norm.
Any other comments from the public? Seeing none, questions from the board or discussion? If not, a motion is in order to appoint Roger to the advisory committee.
Second.
Then moved by whom?
Mr. Rice.
And seconded by Jose.
Did you catch that, Harry? We had Rice and Barajas.
Great, thank you.
To appoint the applicant to the advisory committee. All members in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion carried. Thank you. Now's the time for committee reports from October 10th through November 13th. Are there board members who serve on those committees who want to add anything? Seeing none, comments from the public?
No raised hands online, Chair.
Seeing no comments from the public, back to the board. Any additional comments? So the motion is completed. On to the consent agenda. Items are routine in nature.
Was there,
Any
did I
items
did I
that
hear
want-
a motion and second for this item? to approve the consent agenda? Did I miss it? Did it happen? So we
We're
still
going
need it.
over item 3.2.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we had consent.
Asking if,
Sorry. Okay, too early. Sorry, my bad.
I was asking if anyone wanted to.
Sorry.
pull-
No. No, you're good.
pull
We're good.
Agenda items.
I'm confusing you. Sorry, Chair.
If not, comments on the consent agenda, are there any public comments?
No raised hands, Chair.
Back to the board, motions in order.
Move to approve, Steve McIntyre.
I'll second. Bramer second.
McIntyre
Thank you.
moved, Bramers seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Thank you. Back to the agenda. There are no public hearings. Going on to item 6, the revised procurement policy. Brett, do you have a presentation?
Yes, I'll do a short one on this. The procurement policy was first adopted by the board a couple of years ago in 2023. It's been a good policy, but we recently discovered that it could be enhanced by providing some guidelines around surplus property, and we added a section there at the end. It did go to the executive committee, this idea of should general manager have a authority to either dispose or sell surplus property. We're not talking about real property. It's just things such as if we have devices or some sort of technology that we no longer need. So the decision, they supported, the executive committee supported staff's recommendation to set it at 5,000 if there is a surplus items that is less than 5,000, that the general manager is authorized to deal with that. If it's over that, it comes to the board for board direction and approval. So that revised policy is just simply adding that section.
Questions from the board? Seeing none, public comments? Any
No
online?
raised hands online.
No online. Back to the board, discussion? Seeing none, a motion's in order.
I'll make a motion to approve policy change.
And I'll second.
Second.
Second. Stefani?
Brenda made the motion, Stefani seconded. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carried. Item 6.2 is the Salinas Valley Integrated Hydrologic Model 2025 update. Mr. Williams will do the presentation.
I will be giving presentation, and Ms. Harmon will be running the slides for me, if she would. Thank you very much. So this will be a very high-level presentation. I am going to spare you the details of groundwater modeling, just to give you an update on where we are with the models and their availability. As you might recall, on October 21st, you received the seawater intrusion model. There's two models. I'll talk about this in a second. You received the report on that. There wasn't a presentation, but by receiving that report, you made the seawater intrusion model files available to the public. That's what happens here. Today, you're going to receive a report on a separate model, the Salinas Valley Integrated Hydrologic Model. I'm going to give a short presentation on both of them, but effectively what is going to happen then again today is that second model, all those model files become publicly available to anybody who wants to request them. These are the two models. The yellow outline that you see is the Salinas Valley Integrated Hydrologic Model. That's the report we're releasing today. It is the basin-wide model, and its function really is to look at basin-wide modeling both the surface water and the groundwater together and how do those interact. We've been using an interim version up till now. We're releasing today a final version of it. The red outline there is the seawater intrusion model. It is the smaller model. That's the model that you were presented in October. And its purpose is to simply model the effects of seawater intrusion. That's why it's a smaller area there. It only covers the coast. So I will try and make sure I'm clear about which model I'm talking about at each time. But remember, the Salinas Valley model, SV, is large, and the seawater intrusion model only looks at seawater intrusion. How we got here is that the seawater intrusion model was actually released last year. The USGS released the final, their SVIHM in April of this year. It gave us a chance to review it, gave us a chance to recommend improvements to it. Based on those recommended improvements, a group of organizations, a group of agencies and their consultants all worked on updating the SVIHM. It included the Water Resource Association, Marina Coast Water Agency, a number of other agencies all got together, and that's the update that I'm presenting right now. So why did we do these? There's a number of things that we wanted to do based on our improvements. One of them, though, is we've been collecting a lot of data since the USGS has started this model. You saw this in, say, the deep aquifers reports there. There's a lot of new geologic data. We wanted to include that. We wanted to address the improvements that we thought were necessary to make this model more reliable. And importantly, we now have two models. They have different purposes, but we want them to be aligned. We want them to generally say the same thing. So a large part of what we did is taking the two models that had been built separately and aligning them. So they basically give the same story. What the main improvement in the Salinas Valley integrated hydrologic model, remember this is the big model that covers the entire valley that we got from the USGS. And as I mentioned, the first thing we did is we integrated a lot of the new geologic data. So we have a better analysis of where the aquifers are, where the edges of the basin are, what the depths are, things like that. All of that new information is now in the model. It wasn't available to the USGS. Another large improvement was the Salinas River. The interaction between the Salinas River and the aquifers, we've improved that significantly right now. So it gives us a better idea of how managing the Salinas River or managing our groundwater will interact with each other. And finally, one of the other big improvements, this is just very high level, was that we have got much better handle now on the both municipal and agricultural pumping, where it's happening, the locations, which aquifers it's coming from, and a little more specifically, which wells are pumping. We can't do specific wells, but we are pulling some tricks to get as close as we can to saying these are the wells that are pumping and these are the ones that are pumping less. So those were the big changes to the SVIHM. The seawater intrusion model, remember this is the smaller model that focuses on the coastal area. Most of the work on that was simply to align that model with the SVIHM. That was the real theme, because we had a pretty good working model before, but we wanted to make sure they were aligned. So the new geology that went into the SVIHM also went into the seawater intrusion model. Some new recharge well locations, some new faults are put, and we are now modeling through 2022, so both models cover the same time period now. So a lot of the SWIM, the purpose of that was just to make sure these two models align. This is a picture, a couple pictures I'll walk you through very quickly, showing some of the success, what it means that we've done this. So on the left is a hydrograph. The black dots are the water levels that are measured regularly, measured by Water Resource Agency. The orange line is the simulation of those water levels in the SVIHM, in the big model, the model that covers the entire basin. The blue line is the simulation of those water levels in the seawater intrusion model. And two things you see here. Both models simulate the actual data pretty well, and both models simulate the data in about the same way. Both models are giving the same story in general. And this is exactly what we were trying to achieve. I'm going to admit, this is one of the better hydrographs, okay? I will give you that. But this gives you the idea of what the idea of aligning these two models was, is to get them to both say the same story here. On the right is another example of some of the improvements we implemented. What I'm showing here is the GIMS data, the GIMS pumping data, which are submitted regularly to a Water Resource Agency. The blue is what is the actual data that are submitted to Water Resource Agency. This happens to be in the northern forebay. The orange line is how well we're simulating the pumping. So you can see that there's a very good match between what's being reported now for agricultural pumping and what we're simulating. These are the type of improvements we've added to the model, and we do this to give us more confidence in the model results and a confidence that we can use those for planning purposes. So this is what we got. We got some insights, but there are some remaining challenges. In the 18400, the east side and the Monterey subbasins, it's a better model. The hydrology is better. The interaction with the river is better and the interaction with the coast is better, but still it tells us about the same story that we knew before. There weren't a lot of insights. We have the same story pretty well. The Langley is still one of our most difficult subbasins to model, and it's largely because of the fractured granite in the Langley subbasin. It's not an aquifer like we think of an aquifer, and so it gives us some difficulties. One of the things that we see in both the forebay and the upper valley is the model results are showing groundwater levels are not as stable as we thought they were when we started this process many years ago. Many years ago, we looked at the groundwater hydrographs and they look fairly stable. And so we thought, that's pretty good. They really aren't dropping. Both this model and a revisiting of the raw data suggest groundwater levels actually are dropping slowly over time in both of those subbasins. It's something we're going to have to address in the 5-year periodic evaluation next year, because it is a change from what we said in our original GSP. But that's something we're going to address then next year. So that's the summary. We incorporated all the recent data. We addressed all of our recommended improvements, and we aligned the two models. Now we have two models here that we can start to analyze the effectiveness of projects, and then we can incorporate those results into the 5-year evaluations. Next slide, please. One other point.
Before you go there, Derek, because we've tried to be also much more consistent about the acronyms we use. So there's SVIHM and SWIM, but there's another one that was in my agenda report. We had SVOM.
SVOM.
Is that a third model that is coming?
The SVOM is a version of the SVIHM that is set up to predict what will happen in the future, and the important part about it is it has a predictor in it that says these are the type of reservoir releases that will be needed in the future. So it is effectively the SVIHM that allows us to predict future conditions, is what the SVOM is. And we will be using that also to predict how projects and management actions, how effective those management actions will be. Finally, with this presentation and with you receiving the report, as I mentioned earlier, the model files for both models are publicly available. They're provided by request, but anybody can request the model files and we will provide them to them. We are working with our partner agencies right now to develop protocols for version control, update control, things like that. We want everybody, to the degree possible in the Valley, to be using the same set of models. The models I presented here are the models that the GSA will be basing its conclusions on. And we would like everybody, the Water Resource Agency, the other GSAs, everybody, if possible, to be using the same models. So we are working cooperatively with them to try and set up these protocols so everybody can use the same model and update the same models on a regular basis when necessary. And I believe that's the last slide. Is that right? That's the last slide.
Are there questions from board members?
So Chair, maybe before we get into that, Derek said a statement there that we would like the other agencies, partner agencies, to do something. We have a partner agency here. So maybe, Aura, does that request be something that makes sense for you? Or how do you?
Yeah, good afternoon. Darrell Williams, doppelganger, General Manager of the Water Resources Agency. No, to Perette's point and Eric's, I think it's very important for a variety of reasons. And so as was reported here today, there are a number of different management entities that are relying on these models for their planning purposes, for their cost allocation and recovery efforts and so forth. And as we go about and do our business, it's very easy to get siloed. It's very easy to start modifying models in ways where the models start diverging. And that tends to create more questions and confusion as we bring products out than confidence and clarity. And so, you know, kind of a mission statement of ours has been to look for opportunities to create efficiencies. And so Perrette and I have discussed the Water Resources Agency partnering with the SVBGSA on maintaining the model, offering participation in that effort to the other entities that rely on it, like Marina Coast, like the County of Monterey, and trying to consolidate what we have right now being numerous technical advisory committees into a single joint technical advisory committee. And so the way it has operated historically is there's been a discrete question that's asked, and the same tools are being utilized, and the same people are showing up to the meeting, but they're sort of looking at one facet of the whole equation, and then the same tools and the same people here in a different question. And our thought here is to bring the tools together, bring the people together, and then that way they can work together more consistently. And so looking forward to moving this concept forward.
Yeah, thank you.
And available for any questions.
Mr. Church?
Derek, just a question on your, the slide here is referring to sharper insights and everything, and I think it was number 9 there. And appreciate your work and doing everything onto this. As I've mentioned many times, a lot of times on these subbasins, they're drawn, there's as much politically as they are hydrologically, and don't always make sense. And so, not all of the Langley has the granite problems, and not all the, the 18400 is facing seawater intrusion and has the same geology. And so I'm just wondering, in terms of breaking it down, if you're looking into that, which I'm going to, basically is the northern part of this, the whole basin, which I've brought up, I feel has been neglected a lot of ways in the past and has its own separate issues up there, or whether or not, in your modeling, if you're have worked in looking into that and specific problems there, because a lot of things that are being proposed elsewhere are not going to have any impact in helping the water situation up there. So I'm just trying to see if you've been in terms of the analysis, be able to break it down a little more clearer besides just what subbasins are, sort of a sub-basin area.
Appreciate that. Yeah, and we present this by subbasin for ease because that's what the GSPs are written for, but I do appreciate the fact that the subbasins do have differences, particularly in the Langleys. When you get up into the elevation, it becomes notably more difficult than down in the lower elevation. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Mr. Church. Yeah.
I'm asking if in your models, if you're able to really kind of work out some of those differences, and have you looked at the issues up there, and done any of your analysis and comparisons with with past historical data in that area, and whether the model is still working up that area?
So the question is, in the northern part of the 18400, how are we doing up there then?
In the Langley.
And the Langley, yes. We do look at specific areas. I'm not presenting specific areas. We can identify the parts of the subbasins where we're having the most problem. I would say in the northern part of the 18400, we're doing as well as we do throughout the rest of the 18400. I would say there are specific parts of the Langley subbasin where we have difficulties, but as I mentioned, they have a tendency to be more with the higher elevations because of the geology. That said, we have that ability. That said, at the point we are right now, we are still looking at things at a fairly gross level. Yeah.
Mr. McIntyre?
Thank you, Chair. Derek, thanks for the presentation. I recall in the earlier version of the model that there was drain tile that was modeled south of Highway 68 in the upper, in the 18400 and even into the 4-bay. Has that been removed? Because most of us know that's not necessarily the case. In the newer version of the models, has that been removed?
Yes, that has been removed. That was the result of us improving the interaction between the river and the aquifers. It allowed us to remove that drain tile. That drain tile was taking away too much river recharge, and so we have taken care of that, yes.
Thank you.
Other questions from board members? Seeing none, comments from the public?
Do have hands raised online, Chair. Thomas Versick.
Mr. Groot will be first.
Thank you, Chair. Norm Groot for Farm Bureau Monterey. And more of a question for Mr. Williams and whether or not he's satisfied that the connectivity between the subbasins has been fully vetted out now and that it is satisfactory within the model, because we all know those are lines on a map and it's one big basin and there is some connectivity. So just wondering if you're satisfied with how the connectivity has been represented in the model now. Thank you.
Would you like me to respond to that, Ms. Brennan? Would you like me to respond to that?
Yes.
Okay, I will then. Yes, the connectivity has changed a little as in this updated model. We do believe it is probably the best estimate of how the subbasins are connected. They are connected hydrologically, and we believe we have a very good estimate of it now. Yeah.
Mr. Leib?
Yeah, Bill Light, Monterey County, probably the question would be is how accurate is that connectivity and how much actual water goes through the subbasins? There's I think there's obviously sometimes a misconception is about how much underflow recharge, I think is what Mr. Williams called it. I would also say too, I remember Mr. Williams when I sat up there with you all, where you're all sitting now, said all models are wrong. So I appreciate the comment about the two subbasins down south. I think the SMC TAC, which the Upper Valley and the 4-Bay put together on their own with through their own desire to know what's going on, truthfully and honestly, I believe they have intimated that there is some fluctuations of water levels going down. And maybe that might be the case. Maybe I'll have egg on my face, but from an earlier comment I made here today. But I don't think it compares at all with the critically overdrafted nature we have that's gone on for a very, very long time. And, some of us didn't want Bulletin 118 either. We wanted to divide the valley up in a very programmatic way along APNs and along, what is reality. But, the state said that's what we got. So that's what we have to live with. And I don't know, sometimes questions of climate models come up all the time. And I think maybe it's safe to say that Mr. Bill Gates has said that we're not going to die from climate change. So maybe that's not as big of an issue. And I know you were challenged by it, Mr. Williams, of having to plug those different climate models in. But anyway, this is the best we got. We got to use it, and hopefully we can make it better over time. Thank you.
Mr. Versick? Mr. Versick, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Brennan. Tom Versick speaking. So following up a little bit with Mr. Life, about what Mr. Life said, my understanding is the SMC TAC, the Sustainable Management Criteria Technical Advisory Committee, which function independently for the Upper Valley and for the 4-Bay, either has or will be able to use the model for their particular analyses, because they had earlier this year come to somewhat different conclusions than what the model is coming to. So presumably there'll be more analysis and we'll get more accuracy, because at least from my client's perspective, and I do think I see this in the Southern committees, is knowing the actual truth is much better than pretending it doesn't exist or trying to blame someone else for it. So if it turns out there are, whatever the issues are, to be addressed, getting ahead of it, 2 or 3 decades ahead of it, is actually exactly what Sigma should be all about. I'm volunteering this to Director Church, and given his constituents and concerns, he may want to look at my October 20th letter about the recent appellate court decision. I mean, he doesn't have to believe my words. You should look at the Court of Appeals instead. But having management areas and how granular Sigma needs to be, and it's called the good actor exemption in Sigma, may be appropriate for some place like Langley, where it could be rather different from one place to another. That's all.
Thank you. Are there other comments online?
Yes, we have Nancy Isaacson.
Mr. Isaacson, go ahead.
Thank you, Nancy Isaacson, Salinas Valley Water Coalition. I would like to support Mr. Versick's comment too, as far as knowing the truth, and it's better to know and get ahead of an issue than to be behind the curve. And I know that's something the coalition has spent a lot of resources and time looking at science and at the law, but they're not afraid of, if there's something that needs to be improved in one of the subbasins in the Upper Valley, Forebay, and elsewhere, they're willing, and if they need to accept responsibility, they're willing to accept that responsibility. I do have a question for Derek, if it's appropriate, but and following Director McIntyre's question as far as the drain tiles. So did the drain tiles come out of all of the Salinas Valley, or, because my understanding is north and the 180-400, I think particularly, maybe the east side as well, there's a lot of drain tiles there. So I'm wondering, has that been addressed, or is that a data gap that needs to be addressed? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Williams?
Yes, concerning the drain tiles, we did remove the drain tiles from the entire basin. We realize there are some areas, particularly in the northern part of the 180-400, that does have agricultural tile drains that drains away some water. We have some estimates of how much water is drained away. That is an addition we have to put back into the model right now. Yes.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comments, back to the board. Any more questions? Seeing none, we'll go to item 6.3. It's the Deep Aquifers Monitoring Plan and MOU. The action is to receive the plan and authorize the general manager to adopt an MOU for implementing it. Sarah?
Chair, for the 6.2, we would need a motion also, but you were reading 6.3. So back to 6.2.
Oh, 6.2, it said
Receive.
6.3, okay, yeah.
So I believe we were looking for a motion to receive the model update report. So that's the previous item, if you could.
Make a motion to receive the report.
I'll second. Steve McIntyre.
Been moved and seconded to receive the Salinas Valley Integrated Hydrologic Model 2025 report. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No. Motion carried.
And Harry, we had Cranio was the first one.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
6.3.
Yes, thank you, Chair Brennan and members of the board. So this item is related to the deep aquifers. It's a follow-up to the deep aquifers study. Just a quick recap. Last summer, this board, the Water Resources Agency Board, and the Marina Coast Water District Board, as well as the Board of Supervisors, received the deep aquifer study. The Board of Supervisors was the last governing body to receive the report. And as part of the follow-up direction from the supervisors and our recommendation to you all was for an agency's working group to be formed. We've been meeting regularly with Monterey County Water Resources Agency, Monterey County Environmental Health Bureau, and the Marina Coast Water District, really digging into the deep aquifer study findings, the guidance, and the item before you today is the recommendations for monitoring. And I've invited and asked Amy Woodrow from Monterey County Water Resources Agency, another great collaboration that we've had with the agency. Amy has developed a monitoring plan based on the study's recommendations for monitoring, and I've asked if she could say a few words about it. Thank you. And Amy, I don't know if you have any slides to share. It's up to you. Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, I will be just giving a verbal update this afternoon. Good afternoon, Chair Brennan and Directors Amy Woodrow with the Monterey County Water Resources Agency. And as Sarah mentioned, it's been a pleasure having the opportunity to work on this project, both in collaboration with SVBGSA staff and other partner agencies. So just as a quick reminder, the Deep Aquifers study that was completed in 2024 included a number of recommendations, one of which was related to monitoring groundwater conditions in the deep aquifers. So that recommendation was really the impetus for developing this monitoring plan. As you're aware, the geographic extent of the deep aquifers that was defined in the study spans the jurisdiction of multiple water management agencies. So one of the things that this monitoring plan seeks to do is to describe the groundwater monitoring that's happening throughout the deep aquifers across all of these different jurisdictions. So in developing the plan, we worked with the Marina Coast Water District, GSA, the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District, the Seaside Groundwater Basin Water Master, and also captured the work that the Water Resources Agency does, both monitoring on behalf of the SVBGSA and for the agency's own purposes. So this plan brings together, the full scope of all the monitoring that these entities are doing, and we work together with all those different agencies to align the scope and the timing of the monitoring activities so that we can really get a robust and comprehensive regional picture of what's happening in the deep aquifers. So the monitoring plan, it covers three kind of categories of monitoring. The first of which is groundwater extraction reporting. The second is groundwater level monitoring, and the third is groundwater quality, both for seawater intrusion and looking at groundwater isotopes, which helps to understand the age of the groundwater and movement of the groundwater throughout the deep aquifers. So the plan identifies the monitoring networks. It specifically describes which wells are included. It has maps of those wells and provides a minimum frequency of sampling for all of the programs. So again, as I mentioned, the goal was to align the data collection efforts. There are some of the entities collect samples more frequently than others, but by setting that baseline of a minimum monitoring frequency, we know that we'll have a comprehensive data set at least that level. In some cases, there will be more frequent monitoring, which is always helpful to have more data points when you can get them. The plan also, by covering the full geographic extent of where the deep aquifers have been defined, it helps to understand, what those boundaries are, the different conditions happening in different parts of the deep aquifers, and it also allows us to identify data gaps in the monitoring network. The plan currently identifies 2 data gaps. When we first started working on this after the deep aquifers study was completed, there were quite a few more data gaps. Your agency and the Marina Coast Water District GSA have installed a number of monitoring wells over the last year or year and a half, which have been really helpful in filling those data gaps. So there are still a couple places we'd like to see more wells, but that is captured in the monitoring plan as something that we collectively can continue to work toward in the coming years while the plan is being implemented. And then finally, the monitoring and plan includes a mechanism for annual gathering of data, compiling that, and sharing with the different entities that are collecting that data so that everybody can have access to that full data set. And we have a process described in the plan for evaluating the monitoring networks, which provides an opportunity to make sure we're maintaining a robust monitoring network and an opportunity to make refinements or changes as may be needed, either depending on what the data show or as changes happen with infrastructure over time. And I will turn things back over to Sarah at this point. Thank you for the opportunity to go over the plan.
Thank you, Amy, for your presentation. And just one other final note, that the monitoring plan is already incorporated into the groundwater monitoring program that the agency is implementing with us. And so this plan is really actually capturing existing data collection activities that are already being undertaken. It doesn't call for any, require anything new. It's really just capturing what's already being done. And we have made, I think there's been a big improvement over time in the monitoring. As Amy mentioned, there's quite a few new wells that are helping to expand the monitoring network. So the last piece of this report is that we have provided you with a draft of a memorandum of understanding with the other agencies that are involved in data collection from the deep aquifers, which include the Marina Coast Water District, GSA, and then in the Seaside area, the Seaside Water Master and the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District. And so we've been meeting with that group of other agencies. We did have a meeting and had some final edits last Friday that are not reflected in the draft before you, but we are asking, they're minor they're minor language changes to the indemnification clause, not to the substance of the intent of the MOU. So we are asking for your authorization to General Manager Harmon to be able to go ahead and move that forward once finalized.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Mr. Church.
Thank you, Amy, for work here. We'll bring up some of, we discussed this quite a bit when it came to the board of supervisors, and this is probably of all the data we have, I think is the least reliable in terms of understanding the deep aquifer and the little nuances of it. And I know when it came before the board, there's discussion of the well, putting more wells, deeper wells down the valley. When are those wells going in, or are they in now?
So I believe Emily Gardner is online. We have constructed a new deep aquifer well in the southeastern portion of that filled the data gap that was identified in the study.
Is that on page 9, the very last one down there, last blue dot?
I'd have to ask.
I mean, there's several dots that go down. There's one Gonzales, just above Gonzales, and a couple south of it. And I'm just trying to get an idea of exactly where that last well is in terms of the map. It's close to Greenfield, it looks like, possibly.
I can chime in, Director Church. So those maps do reflect all of the monitoring wells that have been installed. I don't recall which of those furthest south ones it is, but they are captured on the map in the plan.
The one furthest south, where is it at? I mean, you don't recall, you said? Is that what you stated?
I don't have that at my fingertips right now, no.
I'm pulling up a map. I can
Have we,
Get back to you in a
I know
minute.
we do a lot of measuring with isotopes and how the water's moving about. Has that been tested down at the bottom, most southern port?
That one has not been sampled for isotopes yet.
Okay.
When the new wells go in, the plan calls for doing an initial isotope sampling, and then the frequency of sampling thereafter kind of will depend on the results. But an initial sample has not been collected at that new monitoring well yet.
If you have a chance, I'd like to know, maybe you can just send me an email since you don't have the answer now on where that one is located. And
I can chime in. If you're talking about the one, I'm not sure exactly which blue dot you're looking at, but the one that's most recently drilled in the forebay is on Mission and Foothill Road.
what road was that again?
Mission
Mission.
and Foothill,
That's the very most southernest one, okay.
the one that we just drilled, yeah.
Okay, are there plans to drill any more further south?
Not at this time.
And my last question, because I know all three aquifers eventually connect way down somewhere, and I'm not, where exactly do they all kind of merge together? Where's that location at?
I'm going to have to look to Ms. Woodrow to help answer that question. I'm not as familiar with the geology that far down valley.
Yeah, that's a good question. So if you have one of the maps in the monitoring plan up, you can see there's kind of a tannish hash zone at the sort of the very southern tip of the deep aquifers extent. So that is what was defined in the deep aquifer study as an uncertain area of the deep aquifers. So that's kind of, it's around that space, where we're trying to better understand exactly what's happening there. We did have some additional data that was collected by the SVBGSA when they did the airborne electromagnetic surveys that helped to inform that extent, but there are still some areas of uncertainty, exactly as to how far south that extent goes.
Okay, well, I guess and I'll try to hold it up just because it isn't here, with the map, and I don't know if you can see it anywhere on there, but the map I have is this one, and I'm just trying to locate where all three of them meet down here at the bottom.
I'm sorry, Supervisor.
We don't have that. If you don't have that answer now, then let's just go on.
I just want to mention that is not a map that really should be used. That's an illustration.
Okay, well, it's very interesting. It was actually in one of the, it was one of the presentations. So I got to believe if you put something out that you're going to stand behind it. If that's not accurate, that's great to know.
So I just want to clarify. We are trying to produce materials that are helpful to the general public who are not hydrogeologists, that have an in-depth understanding. The mapping of the detailed hydrogeologic layering, it would be a different set of figures than that particular figure.
All right, well,
It's
an important matter if you want to understand these, if they're all meeting together. Just unanswered questions, but I'm going to pass it on because I'm not getting those answered.
Mr. Bramers.
Okay, thank you. Director Bramers here. Maybe it's for Amy, but the depth of the deep aquifer as you head south is, what is that? Or what is the depth of the monitoring well you drilled at Mission and Foothill? Do you know?
Yeah, it varies depending on where you are. I don't have the depths right in front of me right now, but most of the deep aquifers monitoring wells that were installed are, have screen in the, ballpark of about 1,000 feet below ground surface. So obviously the elevation changes as you move, further down the valley, but in terms of depth below ground surface, it's roughly in that approximate depth.
Okay, thank you. That was
Brenda?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I was just reviewing the MOU, and can you please share what the role of Monterey Peninsula Water Management District is?
Yes, so in the seaside area, and I was gonna just pull up this map to help illustrate. Sorry, just one moment. So the deep aquifers extent as defined by the study, over here in this orange area, what's referred to as the seaside region of the deep aquifers crosses both the Monterey Subbasin and into the Seaside Basin. And the Seaside Water Master contracts with the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District to collect the data that is required to be reported to the court under the adjudication. So it's they both collect the data for their own understanding of the groundwater as well as for the required reporting for the adjudicated area. So it's entirely within the Seaside Basin, subbasin.
I have a question.
Sure.
We previously had a moratorium on wells in the deep aquifer. And then we had, that was not carried over. And then we had another recommendation for a moratorium. And it was referred to a committee. And now we're continuing to monitor. When are we going to deal with the overdraft of the deep aquifer?
So the monitoring plan is a standalone work product that we're asking you to receive today. We are working diligently with the other working group agencies on a management framework for the deep aquifers. We're planning for that report to come out in a draft form for public review and to initiate public conversation about it at the end of the year, and then have some really focused conversations around it with deep aquifer well owners first as a first stop, so that we can talk with the folks who are actually relying on the deep aquifers at this point. And then we'll be bringing that information back to this board. We're planning to bring the draft to you in January. And that will have a number of recommendations around management of the deep aquifers, in addition to this monitoring plan, which is the item before you today.
Thank you. Other, Anna?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. I have just a clarifying question under 3.1 for the groundwater elevation monitoring for filling the gaps, because it does state that there's at least 2 monitoring wells that should be constructed to fill the gaps. And under table 1, it does have on the northern region of the deep aquifers, there'll be 1 to be filled there, and then on the southern eastern 1. So there's 2, just to clarify, that will be constructed to fill those gaps. So those haven't been constructed, but they'll be constructed. And then if there's any additional ones, so this is just within the scope for this specific MOU. Anything else outside or any additional wells, gap wells that need to be constructed will have to come back, correct?
So when the study was first released, we had 7 data gaps. Over the last year, we've been able to fill 5 of them. We have these 2 remaining areas where there is a recommendation to drill some new monitoring wells. This plan outlines the monitoring, and we will continue to pursue funding to drill the new wells in those remaining data gap areas. They're not currently funded at this time. So we maximized the grant funding that we had to fill as much of the data gaps as we could up to this point. And then there's these 2 outstanding that we'll continue to pursue filling. So
just the scope of this is the 2 that's identified here.
The remaining data gaps from the study are these 2. And over time, as we implement this plan, we'll come back to that and work on filling them.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Public comments? Mr. Bunn?
Chris Bond at the Salinas Basin Water Alliance. Thank you for the presentation. Just back to Supervisor Church's comments about the area down towards Greenfield. It seems like that's a pretty important question to determine exactly what's going on there. So I wonder if there's a possibility of adding in some kind of data gap plan to tackle that, as well as you also have that indeterminate area that's just north of Salinas that's in the east side. There's a question mark there too. And then the other comment is the MOU seems to say that Water Resource Agency is going to develop standard operating procedures for data collection. I think if I read that correctly. But it'd be great to see that because hopefully those are very, very strict and careful in how they lay out that. Because obviously we have to have all the agencies collecting data exactly the same way or this is going to get jumbled. Thank you.
Mr. Light?
Thank you, Chair. Bill Light, Monterey County. You asked a good question about the moratorium, and it was a moratorium on new wells. Now, landowners could, if they had a well that went bad, and there were many, obviously, in the seawater intruded, critically overdrafted subbasin west of 68, there were numerous ones. You could offset losing your well that went bad and put in a deep well, but you could not pump more water than what you had pumped previously, historically, from the old well. And you're right, they were gonna, I believe it was Supervisor Parker wanted to put a full moratorium, like no wells at all for a couple of years until we could find out more information. It resulted in a standoff with the Board of Supervisors. I think one person was missing and ended up in a 2-2 tie and it failed. And so what they did have rolled back to nothing. And then it's been sitting there ever since. But I thought you did ask a good question because there have been a lot of deep water wells that have gone in since then. And I know everybody wants to know what's going on down south, but I think it's important to remember, people are not drawing, you get south of Gonzales, nobody's drawing really from that deep Paso Robles formation. It's very, very deep. You don't have to go that deep for the water. In fact, if you went that deep, you're probably going to run into blue clay and you're just going to give up because you're not going to go past that. So I think it's important to understand what's going on, of course. I mean, if there is impact down there to the deep aquifer, then, I guess maybe we'll find out. But really the onus is on the critically overdrafted area, what's going on in the deep aquifer, how much water I believe comes in sideways. If I remember one of your presentations, there's sideways inflow, not technically recharge because more water is coming out than's going in. Thank you.
Okay. Other comments? Any comments online?
No raised hands online.
Back to the board, we need a motion to receive the plan and adopt the MOU.
I'll make a motion to accept it. Ramers?
Ramers first, McIntyre second, to receive the plan and authorize the adoption of the MOU. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Those say no. Motion carried. 6.4, demand management framework. Action is to accept the framework and direct staff to continue developing the components. Perrette, do you have
Thank you, Chair. So this item is coming to you third time, twice in October, your regular meeting and special meeting, and then now in front of you again. So I think we did receive a number of comments. Most of them are included in the packet. There was one that came in, I believe, this morning that was emailed to you. Few of them, the main concern that I picked up, it does not have enough detail this framework document. So I wanted to pull up something you haven't seen before. It's still a work in progress. I have asked Miller Maxwell to kind of help me with visualizing where we are in the process. So the green boxes here, let me see if it's going to work with me here. Okay, green boxes are what has been done. And it's been a couple of years we worked on this. 2023 was the stakeholder assessment recommendation by Dave Seppos, and then 2024 legal white paper and also community workshops, and that kind of kicked off the true work at the sub-basin committee levels to start formulating our strategy. So where we are now is framework. It is not a policy. It is not a program. It does not implement anything. It does not activate anything. Those are still things we need to work on. This is a midpoint that coming to you, letting you know what we have done. We have narrowed down the scope of, we are calling them measures. It's the how to respond. What are the things that we could, the solutions under demand management umbrella. So we had a lot more. We had probably a dozen or close to 20 measures that we started with. Now we have identified which ones are the most appropriate. So there's 6 that are ag and 4 that are domestic, so it's 10. This framework talks about them in more detail, what they are, how they could be implemented in theory, not like we're going to go and implement them, but what are the components that need to be used, the cost on a very high level. So this is one of the benefits of the framework, that there's a lot of building foundation, having common definitions, having common understanding what demand management is and what it's not, and then going into the describing each of the measures that we believe are most appropriate for this valley. It does not say that any of those will be or should be implemented across the valley. It sets menu options, and there were a lot of questions, and I absolutely agree. I have the same questions. So if you see this rest of that chart here is actually bigger than the portion we've been through. So there's very specific steps. They are outlined in both an executive summary last page and also in the main framework document. So what we need to do is, we have been doing a lot of that, but we are not done, is to conduct groundwater modeling to really understand the benefits of various demand management measures. We do need to continue the financial and economic analysis. So that work has been going on, and we are hoping to bring to you in the next few months, actually, the outcome of what does it mean for the specific landowners or groundwater users. What does it mean for the region if we were to implement any of those? If that is done, we do need to develop rules and guidelines for the measures. And what I mean by that is policies or programs to stand up, especially if we're talking about something that is more significant and more long-term. There's a lot we have to think about. How to put on an effective policy, who is going to do it, how it applies, who is going to be enforcing it, how is it going to be paid for. All of that needs to be still done. It's to come. It's not going to be part of the framework, but very likely it will be developed into a policy or a set of policies. Then what needs to happen? The demand management doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's the same way as any other budget. Look at how a city develops a budget. You look at both sides. You look at what is the revenue, and then you look at the expenses. And I think every prudent agency or company needs to do both. What makes more sense? Should we be looking at increasing the revenue? That means more of a project side, or should we be tightening our belts? So the demand management and assessing what is appropriate, where is it appropriate, needs to go through the same process that all of the feasibility studies this summer are going to go through. They're going to go through integrated implementation strategy. It's give and take. It could be that we could have a smaller project if we use demand management. It could be that there's certain areas or regions in this valley that do not benefit from a project or suite of projects. It could be very well that demand management is appropriate to be recommended to be used there. It does not have to be lateral. It actually could be looked vertically, for example, deep aquifers. It very well could be that we are recommending something that will be applicable only for deep aquifers. That is a reason why it's valley-wide framework, because deep aquifers don't stay under one. They actually crossing over multiple or under multiple ones. So I just want kind of to give you this idea or better sense of what this framework was intended to be. It's a work plan, if you will. Work plan does not have every detail in it. Work plan is something that the staff feels comfort bringing to you, that you understand where staff is going and you agree with the direction. Why now? That's another piece. This deliverable is one of the task components. It's in round one. So we will be submitting this draft document or this demand management framework document as a grant one deliverable. That needs to be done by December 31st. So we thought it was more fair and transparent if the community, the public, and all of you get to see this and accept it. Another thing was brought up, using the word accept. So you probably know that about me. I'm trying to tighten the language. Everybody comes with their own style and uses different words for different purposes. But then it doesn't help you, doesn't help us, doesn't help the public to understand what we're talking about. So in those different verbs that we ask the staff recommends you to do, we came up with a receive that will use that if a work product is authored by a third party. So we don't have much control over that. Like audit reports come to you, we are not auditors. We're not gonna go and tell them write it differently. The models, groundwater models, you receive them today because again, I can't get into how wrong or right it is. So it's receiving, it's gone through a peer review. This is slightly different. Staff was heavily involved in helping with consultants developing this. So we feel that there's more ownership and we want to use a different word. So that's why we came up with that word accept, that if it's something that is still work continues, it's not a set in stone, it very well could be tweaked in the future. Because if we do go through those other work activities here, we may learn something that makes us to come back to this document and do a next revision of that. So, but we're using accept for that. And then approve and adopt, that is what we say for policies, budgets, resolutions, ordinances. That's a rule. We stand by that. This document is a roadmap and a guideline. And then I think there was some things, Reed, I would like maybe you to address in some of the comment letters because that's more the legal side of it. So you want to come up here?
Reed Galogli, General Counsel for the GSA. Thank you for the opportunity, Perrette. As you may have seen in a number of comment letters from a number of stakeholders, there have been what I would call some buzzwords thrown out there to, I think, get attention and to make people look and take a close look. And we've done that. So to the extent that there's been some suggestions that you cannot accept this report, that it's incompatible with the contract, that it's an arbitrary and capricious action, I want you all to rest easy. That's simply not the case. I can appreciate that different stakeholders want different outcomes, but that doesn't mean that the process that's going through and the adoption, or in this case, accepting a working document is somehow violative of the GSA's obligations or flying in the face of what the contract calls for. We did get a good letter as well from, I want to say the Alliance and their attorneys. A very long letter, lots of questions. There are some really good questions in there, and I think those questions will be flushed out through the process that Perrette identified. But what I wanted to observe is as you go through that with a fine-tooth comb, looking at it from the legal side, there's no accusation or claim against what's being done and proposed as somehow unlawful. What they do say at one point, and I actually had a nice conversation with Derek and Perrette this morning, is they said, if there were an unlawful distinction made about beneficial uses, we would object. And I said, so would I, because that presumes what's happening is unlawful. And as your legal counsel, I'm not going to encourage you or give you recommendation and advice to do unlawful things. So the fear of the future, I appreciate it. It's real. Pressure from what's coming with climate change, with droughts, with managing this water are going to be difficult. But that being said, I think because people are so worried about that long-term vision, they are using some words that might not be appropriate to get your attention. And I want to, assuage your concerns if you have them, that this is not an unconscionable, arbitrary, and capricious action. This is pretty standard. We're going to be accepting a document. We're going to be forwarding it on to DWR to get grant funding back. And if we don't take that step, then we may be on the hook for those dollars ourselves. So to the extent that you have questions, I'm here to answer them and provide any assurances that you need or explanations that you need. But I wanted to draw that out because there have been a lot of letters written, a lot of concerns have been raised, but from the true legal analysis is, I can appreciate there's a distinction in what you want the end result to be, but that doesn't mean that the steps that we're taking today are a problem legally. So with that.
So is that the end of your report?
Yes, thank you.
Questions? Mr. McIntyre?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Not so much a question as, well, I guess it's a question. I personally, looking at the letters that we received, I don't see the harm in continuing to discuss this process because, as with many things we've done, we can go back and edit and amend and all those things, not the 10 Commandments or anything by that nature. But I do want to hear in public comment, and I realize that we're up on 3-minute restraint, from those that do oppose this, that can provide a cogent argument why we should not accept, I think we're getting into semantics here, or receive this report and continue. So that's what I wanted to state.
Other questions? I guess resulting from Steve's comment, accepting the report does not preclude amending it. Is that correct? Okay, comments from the audience, from public comments?
Chris Bone with the Salinas Basin Water Alliance, and you're correct, Mr. Globally. Our letter was a letter of questions and concerns at this point. And we recognize, no process is perfect. And we have a lot of questions and concerns about the document and where it's going. But we do appreciate, though, the fact that it's an all-valley approach, which harkens back to the original all-valley integrated approach that the agency first started with. So we appreciate and agree with that. We think that's the correct approach to this. And that said, we're okay with it going forward. If I was up there, I would vote for it to move it forward and get into the specifics and the policies and the nuts and bolts. But that said, in our letter, we have a lot of questions in there and a lot of concerns. But 3 of the big ones are for us is, one, there's not a lot of discussion about how demand management is going to integrate with water rights. So that's a really big question for us and a big concern. So we're going to have to see how that plays out. And then the second one is there's a lot of back and forth in the valley about whether or not this should be an all-valley approach for demand management. And so we do have a concern that that focus would be lost or fractured in the future. That concerns us. And the third big concern is we're very concerned that there's no mention, at least in theory, of the potential for a moratorium on any increase in groundwater pumping. So if demand management goes forward and it manifests or is applied somewhere in the valley, our stance is we got to talk about then, as part of that, an all-valley moratorium on increase in pumping. And we think that's a very big concern. Thanks.
Yeah. Mr. Leib?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Bill Light, Monterey County. Steve, I'm not going to say don't accept the report. I think you should move it along. Lots of letters and comments, I'm sure, to consider, and there's more refinement to happen. And I don't think, looking at the entire valley for demand management is, we should look at the whole valley. The thing is are you going to apply it equally throughout the valley? Because there are some parts of the valley that are critically overdrafted. There's one area that we know of very clearly. It's been there very prominent for a long time. And there are other parts that aren't so much, or maybe not at all. Or maybe there's even areas within those subbasins that are not at all, and maybe some have an issue. I think the problem some people have is it's not a one-size-fits-all valley. It never has been. And, so if the thought is, well, we're just gonna, everybody's got to cut back by 20%. If we have to cut back by 20%, everybody's got to cut back, but that's not going to fly. And as far as the water rights, yeah, I guess that's to be determined. One group seems to be pretty obvious to me that they're going to litigate. I won't say the name of the group, but I think you probably could surmise who it is. They're going to litigate their water right. They're going to try to. And that's been a common tactic that's being discussed, is that if you don't get your way with Sigma and your GSA that's happening, you're going to go to court, you're going to put a stay on all the GSPs, and you're going to argue your water rights, and that's probably going to go on for at least a few years, maybe longer, and they're going to spend a lot of money on attorneys. And they still might not get what they want. So go forward with the report. Maybe there'll be some others online that'll feel different, but it's important to remember this is not a one-size-fits-all valley.
Thank you.
There are things happen differently throughout the valley. Thank you.
There are comments online.
Yes, we have Thomas Versick and then Jerry Lohr.
Mr. Versick?
Thank you, Chair Brennan. So I'm going to change up what I'm saying a little bit. I agree with Mr. Bunn that water rights are important, and here's the simplest version of California water rights. It's impossible to have a water right for unreasonable use of water. And if I understood what the Alliance is saying, they want a holistic approach that means when one part of the valley has to legitimately do something that could have some harm, make sure that every other part of the valley is also harmed. It'd be like somebody who breaks their foot and then wants to make sure every hand is also broken and the other foot. So it's not just the one foot. It takes away the ability regionally, quote, holistically, for whatever comes to pass that is not welcome to be mitigated in another part. It's a really, really bizarre approach. And for that reason, I think, honestly, rather than litigation, it's DWR that needs to take a look. And my point has been that the contract, because this is for a contract, this document doesn't meet the contract. It's certainly not Part 4A. You could look at page 378, 377 of your package. And so DWR shouldn't accept this under this contract. And hopefully you'll get a good product later. And to wait until it is ready, what are you losing? It's a really peculiar direction the GSA is taking. And in the big picture, not 1-2 months, not 6 months, not 3 years, big picture, this leads to failure. And the ones who's going to fail first is a critically overdrafted basin. My clients will be fined for a really long time. So you can slow it down, ask staff to be way more specific about what part of the contract this meets or doesn't meet. Or you can let DWR decide maybe you met it, maybe you didn't, maybe the 18400 has to pay a lot of extra tier 2 fees to pay back DWR. That's where you are. It's not about litigation. Thank you.
Next person.
We have Jerry Lohr and then Nancy Isaacson.
Go ahead, Jerry.
So this is Jerry Lohr. I've been a landowner there for more than 50 years. This effort has been totally inappropriate. Totally inappropriate. We all recognize where the needs are in the valley. But to ask 250,000 acres, many acres that are being properly used and properly irrigated for many years, 60, 80, 100 years, to spend a lot of time worrying, trying to get some better understanding of the area here is totally inappropriate. Totally inappropriate. And I'm sure there are others other than myself, and I'm 88 years old, soon be 89, who will want to fight this because it is totally inappropriate to have this framework cast upon all people in the county. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Ms. Isaacson?
Thank you, Nancy Isaacson. First, I'd like to thank staff for their clarification on the intent here for the demand management framework. There have been concerns, there are concerns, coalition's raised concerns about the role of the SMC TAC for the Upper Valley and Forebay, and because we believe that the Upper Valley and Forebay committees wanted to rely on their TAC for recommendations, and really more of a proactive measure and going forward to avoid getting themselves in a situation to where they would not be able to meet their minimum thresholds. And so we do appreciate the clarification of the intent, and understand that it is not necessarily going to be a one-size-fits-all work plan, because there may be certain criteria, but how it's implemented could be very different throughout the valley, throughout each subbasin. In fact, it could be very different in different areas. And we think that really is another important consideration. Bill Light mentioned about looking at demand management throughout the valley, as well as the Alliance has advocated for that. But if you look at it, you need to look at it with a goal in mind. What is your goal and purpose? And will doing so by implementing it throughout wherever, whether it's the whole of a subbasin, throughout the valley, will it meet your goal and purpose? And that will need to be shown. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there other comments online? Back to
No
the
other
board.
raised hands online.
Back to the board. Motions in order. Oh, Anna?
Sorry. Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just have a question in terms of, and thank you for the clarification that this is obviously a living document and it can be amended, and the framework can continue to be modified. I know that obviously there was a lot of concerns and questions. I know there was a couple of letters that came before us, but I think for me, I just want to make sure that I know, because it's critical in terms of integrating the existing laws and provisions in regards to the human rights to water and how they can disproportionately impact disadvantaged communities, and how that could be integrated to address some of the concerns and some of the letters that we heard before us as well into the demand management plan. And looking at also, because it could be different for the various cities and the various aquifers within the different areas, but also working to see what are some of the measures or mechanisms some of the cities are already taking. I think that's really important. I'll speak for our city with the city of Soledad, and we're already taking measures to ensure that we're not pumping groundwater. We do have a massive project in place will be completed in the next 2 years where we won't be pumping as much. I mean, we're doing a lot of recycled water projects, so we will be alleviating a lot of the groundwater pumping. So we want to make sure that a lot of that is captured as well, and making sure that that's all being taken into consideration as we're planning for that demand management as well.
Great points. I appreciate that. Within our valley, we have, as we know, majority of the use is ag, but we do have municipal and investor-owned utilities. They have their own mandates from the state, what they have to achieve in terms of water use efficiency. So all of that needs to be part of the further work, us thinking what is applicable, what makes sense, how do we give credit to those users that already are doing things. So it's not all size fits all, and it applies in every way. It applies to the type of use, it applies to where it is, but most importantly, what is it going to achieve? Is it going to get us closer to sustainability? So it's part of the whole thinking. Derek and I, we have talked about the projects ideally. We would like to go to that first. But there could be a gap we are filling because it takes 5-10 years to get to a project, so maybe it's a temporary. We also, in the framework, there's long-term and there's short-term. Long-term refers to the 20 plus 30 years sustainability timelines that we have. Short-term, what happens, and with today's weather, it's hard to imagine, but droughts come and go. What happens if we step into a 3-year, 5-year, 10-year drought? It's like emergency operations plan. For me, it's let's then take it out and see what are the appropriate measures we could quickly activate, because we're all hurting and we all need to be looking at something we can easily implement. So all of that it's very appropriate. I realize this document does not have that level of detail, and it wasn't intended to have that. But it needs to come to you and to public before we can implement anything.
Any other comments? A motion is in order.
Move to accept.
I'll second.
Been moved by Para and seconded by McIntyre to accept the recommendation. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion carried. Back to the agenda. 7, the general manager's report.
Thank you. I'm going to try to make it quick. We are a little past 5 o'clock. We did advise all of the board members that it may go to 5:30, but we do need to wrap up then because we do have a next meeting here. So I have a few things to share with you. Let me find this quickly where I am. Okay, one of those. Here we go. Okay. So a couple of agreements that I have executed, and per our procurement policy, I am to inform the board if it's under 100,000 threshold. So we did a water rights support for the BGR, brackish groundwater restoration project with Minasian Law for 30,000. Waterwise Consulting, it is the home assessment services that we are contracting with them to do it for the rural residential as part of the WEP Water Efficiency Pilot Program. I have a huge ask. You may have received an email from Harry. We are ready to spend money and help people to be more efficient, sending experts to their house and helping them to look at what inside devices, fixtures, what outside, smart irrigation controllers, what type of landscape they have. We need to spend this money before round 2 grant expires in March. And so we have only received, I believe, 1 taker. So especially those board members that live in the northern part, if you are a rural resident, please sign up yourself and convince another person to do that. So I think once you do it, the word gets out. It's a great program, but we need to spend the money. So it's a contract up to 100,000, not to exceed. I have executed now sub-grant agreement with Marina Coast Water District GSA, and it's actually a reduction. The original contract was 3.8 million, and we are giving back some of that money to Marina Coast Water District GSA because the monitoring wells came in under budget, and they have, Sarah, they are doing a monitoring well, so they can put it to good use in constructing additional monitoring well. And the last one is Schaff and Wheeler. It is for CSIP hydraulic model expansion. It's an 82,990, and it's also from grant funds. So that's on agreements, and I wanted to also advise you or just share with you another collaborative thing we're trying with Water Resource Agency. So staff has been working extremely well together. I'm so proud and excited, and it's invigorating to kind of they have, of course, much larger staff and specialists, and for our little staff to be able to use them as our extension of our staff and our brain power, it's been fantastic. What we haven't been able to establish yet or figure out, what's the best way to bring the two boards together and kind of have you to share, because we're managing our stakeholders and by and large the same. We are managing kind of the same area. So how can we do that? So what we are trying with ARA is actually use our vice chairs and start with the GM and vice chair, because it's a process. And everybody's so busy, so we're kind of more thinking next year we may really need the chairs, and it happens with both agencies. The vice chairs are in line to become the chairs, so we can work with those people a little longer to just kind of use their brains first, and then get some suggestions from them on how to, is it some sort of strategic planning thing to do with full boards? Is it workshops? Is it, what else can we do to help the two governing bodies to be aligned? So I just wanted to be fully transparent that we're going to be having some just small meetings with vice chairs, and then they will report back to us and to you how it's going and what ideas may come out of it. So that's all.
Questions from the board? Comments from the public? Close the public comments. Any additional?
Online. No raised hands online.
Thank you. Go to this item 7.2, financial reports. Any comments from the public? Close the public comments. Any board member discussion? On to item 7.3, SB 707. Reed, do you have a report?
Thank you, Chair Brennan. I'm not sure how many of you spend your time reading California legislative alerts, but SB 707 was passed, and it does contain a lot of changes to the Brown Act and how these types of meetings are going to be conducted, how the public can engage with you on Zoom. And what I will say is, I don't have an answer for you today that's going to clearly solve all of your problems, but I am working with a legal team at our office, and given the complexity of this GSA, which is neither a special district, a city, nor a county, but might also be an eligible multi-jurisdictional agency with a number of committees, there are a lot of layers here. That being said, we will have some clear guidance for you. It'll come out before the new year when the regulations take effect. Essentially, it may allow some of you to have some remote attendance, which is a benefit, as long as there's going to be a number of us here physically present in the room, but that also tethers to who receives compensation and who does not. So this is why it's a very complicated analysis, and we're going to have to sit down and kind of go on a case-by-case basis to give you guys exact guidance on how to address it. But it is something we're aware of. It is something that will be felt by not just this organization, but pretty much any Brown Act organization in this county. So you won't be the first and the last, and this won't be the last you hear of it.
Questions from the board? Comments from the public? Close the public comment. Any further discussion? On to 7.4, informational items. We received letters from 2 letters noted in the agenda. Any public comments? Close the public comment period. Any board member discussion? Item 8, opportunity for members of the Board of Directors to provide oral reports. Any reports? Any public comments? Comment period is closed. We received correspondence, which is identified in the agenda. Are there any comments from the board? Any comments from the public? Close the public comment. Any board discussion? With that, we will adjourn 5 minutes early.
And there's no meeting in December, so you get a break from me. No board meeting.
Chair, let me just adjourn. I see Tom Versick raised his hand. Do you want to give him an opportunity,
Excuse me,
or?
Chair Brennan, I think we may have a public.
All right, right as you said adjourn, he raised his hand, so if you'd like to give him a chance.
Thank you. This is Tom Versick, and my public comment is to item 13, which I'm not sure actually came up, which is the future items. And so for the board's consideration, the second one, Sigma Round 1 Project Update Report, if they look at page 377 of their current agenda packet, that is the standard for that report. You will find it there. And hopefully when that one comes before you, every single piece of that component will have been fully vetted and will have been fully done and submitted to DWR. And if you read it carefully, it's a companion to the demand management framework. And it should have numbers, and it should have specificity, and it should be sub-basin by sub-basin. So I am looking forward to that complete Task 4A project update report come January, and hopefully the rest of you are too. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Have a good holiday, everyone.
Okay,
No
thanks,
other
Brenda.
raised hands.